Most people throughout the diaspora are well aware of the fact that there was a war on the minds of African and Afro-descended people. The physical bondage of a people cannot last forever, as socio-political situations change over time. However, control over the mind has the potential to do much more damage and last much longer. Europeans were aware of how critical that was. So today, we're going to discuss 3 ways Europe went to war on the African mind and how Afro-descended people fought against it. What up, African world? It's Home Team here, and welcome back to another video of African history, culture, and worldview. By supporting this channel on Patreon, you're helping in the creation of these videos and contributing to this content. The link to Patreon is in the description box below. Also, stay tuned with a word from my sponsors.
Hello, my name is Howard Dorsey. I'm 54 years old. I'm here to talk about my experience with herbal results. I was getting sick, so I went to the doctor. And they told me that my blood pressure was high, my cholesterol was borderline or high, so I was very sick. You know, sometimes I thought I was dying at some point. And I ordered a bottle of olive leaf extract. This is how the bottle comes in. And within the first probably week and a half, 2 weeks, I checked my blood pressure and it was back down to normal. It was like 120/80. My cholesterol went down to 125. You know, I definitely believe that olive leaf extract from Herbal Results saved my life. And that's real. I mean, I recommend it to everyone in my family, my friends, and we've seen a lot of results in that manner as well.
Purchase now at herbalresults.net.
To begin, to do a topic like this justice, you would need multiple videos, a series if you will. There's just entirely too many things to address, and one video cannot get the job done. That being said, content like this is intended to be a general outline of this history. The foundation of this video is based on my personal analysis and interpretation of historical events. Europeans were not the only people group to go to war on the minds of Africans. They're simply the most recent, so please keep this context in mind. There were multiple ways Europeans attempted to infiltrate the mind of African people. The 3 principal ways seem to be religion, science, and education. Let's start with religion. Religion has an obvious spiritual component. Spirituality is important because in a way, it justifies our existence and gives it meaning. Given how powerful that is, the one who controls it becomes the arbiter of the truth and the future. Europeans wanted to control how Africans viewed themselves, thus creating a predictive model for their future. They weaponized the Abrahamic religion of Christianity. Ironically, Christianity was a borrowed idea for the Europeans. It's something they adopted themselves. However, within the Christian worldview existed a pre-programmed ideology that could be used against the African. Today, though a misnomer, it's infamously known as the Curse of Ham. Reference to the Hamitic curse can be found in early Judaic literature and clearly brings race, that is, blackness, to the forefront as a punishment levied on Ham's descendants. The Babylonian Talmud in 500 AD specifically identifies Africans as the target of Noah's curse and makes a note to highlight blackness as a consequence. It even delineates African phenotypes such as kinky hair and full lips. Europeans found this to be the perfect utility for the war over the African mind. As many enslaved African people embraced Christianity, interpreted via a European lens, they inadvertently were forced to deal with their divine damnation. In buttressing their attack on the African mind, Europeans utilized the science of the time. Darwin's theory of evolution undoubtedly influenced the Western world greatly. Europeans, in their pitch to promote superiority, discovered what they believed to be a new credible tool. For many Europeans, the colonial conquest and colonial rule that followed needed an intellectual justification, something that social Darwinism conveniently supplied. Simply put, whites alleged that blacks were biologically inferior and thus were incapable of ruling themselves. A corollary of that argument implied that whites had a moral responsibility to rule over Africans for their own good and welfare. This justification was expressed in Rudyard Kipling's pro-imperialist poem, The White Man's Burden. The educational approach, in a way, incorporates both the spiritual and the scientific, especially during the 19th century. Not only did you have the Dark Continent trope, which promoted Africa negatively, but you had the ubiquitous missionaries sent throughout the continent to instruct African people to value a Western worldview and civilization, the same worldview that promoted their own inferiority. An undercurrent of the Dark Continent trope was that Africa was a primitive continent with dark people and a dark history. Humans who've clearly not contributed anything to world civilization or accomplished anything of note. Most scholars today have significantly broken that pattern of thinking. However, the damage to the African mind still has its residual effects. One scholar of the 19th century, Edward Wilmot Blyden, was among the early thinkers of the African diaspora, challenging the war on the African mind. Ironically, Edward Blyden was not completely impervious to the war himself. Via hindsight, he had some views that many in the diaspora would disagree with today. His critics remained vocal about his contradictory ideas and his borrowings from European writers concerning race. Regardless, he was very much aware of the campaign against the African mind. Edward was from the Caribbean, the island of St. Thomas. Later in his life, he moved to Liberia, where he was known as a strong proponent of black nationalism. He's known mostly for what he coined as the African personality, a precursor to what we would later refer to as Afrocentric thinking. He advanced principles and values with global significance for African people by proclaiming that Africans had a history of past accomplishments worthy of respect, that African civilization had been stagnated by Christianity, and that Africans had clearly defined characteristics that he called the African personality. Blyden was the first major advocate of the African-centric philosophy as a means of social change for Africans on both the national and international levels. His ideas and influence are fundamental to understanding the African-centric paradigm and an important aspect of African cultural heritage in North America. His African personality theory is an idea that promotes the moral uprightness for Afro-descendant people to utilize, position, and preserve African biology, history, and culture as their base for understanding the world. The African personality is to be a tool to help form institutions and socio-political structures. In doing so, Edward Blyden believed African people and the diaspora around the world would reach their greatest potential. The primary goal of the African-centric paradigm is to promote social change through Africans having sovereignty over their thought, speech, and action. Edward Blyden was one of many who challenged the European attack on the African mind. It goes to show that Afro-descended people not only resisted physically the bondage of enslavement and white supremacy, but also resisted intellectually. Well, I'm all out, guys. If you like these videos and want to help in its continued production, consider supporting the home team on patreon.com. The link is in the description box below. Know thyself, remember your ancestors. Peace.